Hey guys, welcome back to Sela Social Studies.
Hey, it's Sela Social Studies.
Today we're going to be covering, one of the most controversial things in the history of the United States, as well as, one of the most controversial and really disgusting things to happen during Andrew Jackson's presidency. And this is Native American removal, the Native American Removal Act, and the Trail of Tears. So you have during Andrew Jackson's presidency really a mass eviction of Native Americans from the east coast of the United States and go into one small little territory. So, as you know, from day one, right, Native Americans lived in the United States, which was just North America. That's why they're called Native Americans or indigenous people. They were here first. They lived in settlements throughout the whole part of the United States. Europeans came over, and once they started taking the land, they were taking it from the Native Americans, and they didn't stop. Andrew Jackson did not sympathize with Native Americans. Remember the Creek War? He was okay with killing lots of Native Americans. He was okay with taking all their lands. He did not like any Native American tribes. Jackson and the other political leaders in Washington at the time wanted to open land to settle for American farmers. That was their idea. Hey, let's have the American farmer, the manifest destiny, going to the west coast of the United States. Let's keep pushing outwards. And who are the people that are in the way but the Native Americans? And whose land do they have to take? The Native Americans. So on May 28th, 1830, Congress passes what we call the Indian Removal Act. And what the Indian Removal Act does is it authorizes the removal of Native Americans living east of the Mississippi and putting them in lands west, and specifically, the one major area land west is Congress establishes what we called the Indian Territory, and the Indian Territory is what we call today, present day Oklahoma. If you drive through Oklahoma on Highway 40, I think it was, goes through Oklahoma, you will see. You just go from tribal land to tribal land to tribal land, but you have taken all these natives and now you're trying to force them into a smaller and smaller area. And to do this, the government creates the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which all their job is to manage the removal of the Native Americans from the east and move them all to the other side of the Mississippi River, modern day Oklahoma. So who were some of the tribes? The Choctaw, they were the first to be sent to Indian Territory. They were from Mississippi and Alabama. They had 7.5 million acres of their land taken away from them, and about 1/4 or 25% of them died along the way in this move. The Creek natives, they would resist, but they were captured and forced to march to Indian Territory also. They were from Georgia, Florida, Alabama, North Carolina, and the Chickasaw. They were able to negotiate a treaty for better supplies, but still many of them died from Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. And for those of you who are taking my class in school, just to let you know, Raleigh to Oklahoma is about 1,200 miles. Remember, they didn't have cars or anything like that to move them along. These Native Americans literally had to walk or take a boat or something like that if they were to cross a river and go all the way out to this, what we call here, unorganized territory, the Indian Territory, or what we know today as Oklahoma. So the Cherokees actually tried to assimilate more. They adopted a white culture. They had their own government and own writing system, which was developed by Sequoyah. And they tried to, say, hey, look, we took on your ways, kind of just leave us alone. And Georgia took their land anyway, and the Cherokees sued the state. Now listen to how this unfolds. The Supreme Court agreed in the Cherokees' favor. They said that in Worcester versus Georgia, that Georgia had no legal power over the Cherokee Nation. So the decision has been made, and President Jackson, who could have made that happen and say, here you go, you guys can stay, he was like, hey, I'm going to side with the state. You can take their land. And if you want to enforce the rule that, you can't take the Cherokee land, you deal with the settlers who want that land. It's off of my hands. So Andrew Jackson did not hold up his oath of office to uphold the laws of the land. He's like, nope, take the land. You want to deal with the repercussions, you deal with the repercussions. So what happens is the Cherokees are forced to move to native territory. Chief Blackhawk and the Fox and Saw fought rather than leave Illinois, and what happens here is they run out of food and supplies and they're forced to leave anyway. Osceola came from Florida in the Second Seminole War. Hundreds of Seminoles, including Osceola himself, died, but some Seminoles actually resisted removal. They moved towards like the Everglades area, and they are still actually the Seminole tribe is still part of Florida today. And the Seminole, actually, they have casinos down there and stuff like that. So still tribal nations have saved part of their land, not a good huge part, because most of them got forced to move to reservations. In 1838, many Native Americans were forced to march on an 800-mile march from their native land to this new Indian territory. This is what we call the Trail of Tears. It was named this because all the great number of Native Americans that died along this trail, they were forced to walk day and night with little or no rest, little or no food, and about 25% of 18,000 Cherokee who went on this trail perished. So this is why Andrew Jackson is definitely a very controversial president. A lot of people see him as a great president, but a lot of people see him as like a terrible president because of the things that he upheld in office and the things that he forced to happen in his office, especially when it goes with the removal and the treatment of Native Americans in the United States.